Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live stream event. I am so excited that you guys are joining us from all around the world. Please feel free to comment. Let us know where you're listening in from. I'm so excited today. We have a very, very special guest. Before I introduce her, though, I would like to do a short acknowledgement of country. So I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which I am on, the Darug people, and pay my respects to the elders past, present, and future as they hold the memories, the traditions, and the culture of the Aboriginal and the Torres Strait Islander people here in the nation of Australia. So welcome, everyone. At the end of every month, as you know, we do an amazing live event that is free for everyone to attend, and we invite an expert Montessorian or an educator or an influencer, and we talk about some really, really amazing topics. And today we are going to be talking about the Montessori potential. I'm so thankful that all of you have taken out your time to be here. I know in some places it's morning here in Australia, it's afternoon or evening in the US. So please let us know where you're watching from. We've got one viewer that says, "Hi, I'm watching from Bangsamoro in South Philippines." That's amazing. Thanks so much for joining us. And as these events take place, they are also part of our Guide and Grow Village. If you're not sure about the village, we do have a 14-day trial so that you've got access to free resources. We do live events, we do workshops, and so much more. But I would like to introduce our special guest for today. And before I bring her on, I just wanted to do a shout out from Mexico. We've also got another shout out from Adelaide, South Australia. Thank you all for joining us. I would love to introduce to you all our very, very special guest today, Paula. And before I let her do a little introduction, I would love to tell you a little bit about Paula. So today, our topic is unleashing or talking about the Montessori potential. And we are live with Paula Lillard Preschlack. And her bio is that she's a writer and a speaker. She's spent 25 years as a teacher and head of school at the Forest Bluff School. She's currently working on a book that we're so excited about and we actually are going to talk about today. Called The Montessori Potential. And she's given over 100 talks to parents at Montessori schools and to educators at Montessori conferences as well. And I know that her work focuses on the principles and success of the Montessori approach, learned from over 25 years of teaching and observing children from birth all the way to adulthood. So welcome, Paula. I'm so excited to have you here at Guide and Grow.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a great opportunity, Sylvia. I'm so happy to be here.
So tell us, Paula, for everyone that's watching and might not know a little bit about your background, let us know who you are, what your background is. I know you've got some amazing family history in Montessori, so let us hear all about it.
Let's see. Well, I'm the youngest of 5 daughters. My mother, Paula Polk Lillard, is an author. She's written 4 books about Montessori. And I have another sister who co-wrote a book with her and co-founded a school with her. That's Lynn Lillard Jessen, and a sister, Angeline Lillard, who is a researcher at the University of Virginia. And she's done a lot of research with Montessori and wrote a book, Montessori, The Science Behind the Genius. So we have a lot of Montessori going on in our family. I definitely grew up surrounded by Montessori teachers and talk about Montessori. I took my training for ages 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 12, and then audited the training for adolescents with AMI. All of those were with AMI. And I've taught and worked at Forest Bluff School for 25 years. I was the assistant head of school and the head of school. So kind of come at Montessori from many different angles and have spoken with parents for years and years about what Montessori is, trying to explain Montessori. So I love to write about Montessori. I love to explain it to people. I love to talk to people about it. I love to be with children. And it's been a big part of my life. And I'm excited to be here and excited to have written a book that will come out in February that will help more people to learn about Montessori. So
that's amazing. And I feel like having that family history, did you almost feel some sort of a pressure to live up to this expectation from, to write a book of your own or to be on that journey?
That's a really great question, but no, definitely not. I never had pressure of any kind. I think that I actually didn't know I wanted to go into education, though, and I was encouraged by my sister Lynn, who could be very persuasive. But after college, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, and she kept saying, "You should go take the Montessori training. It'll be a great education for you." And we joke about that. But I went not really knowing if I wanted to be a teacher, but knowing that I needed a salary and a job and
Yes.
something I could depend on. And I just really fell in love with it. It felt really right for me.
I think that's the beauty of Montessori. Like when people ask me how I came across Montessori, it's amazing how when you just come across it. And when I first read about it, I'll never forget the moment that I first read about Montessori and I thought, this is what I'm meant to be doing. And like you, I had no intention of being a teacher. I was not really, in that field. I was in a completely different field. And then I came across Montessori by chance, or not by by coincidence, but really by fate. And as soon as I read about it, I just thought, wow, this is amazing. This is incredible. I need to be doing this. And I feel like no matter who I speak to on the Montessori journey, a lot of people have that same kind of connection with it. So I think that's really amazing that you had that moment as well along your journey, even though you were surrounded with all of these Montessorians in your life. So
Right. I hear that all the time too.
yeah, we've got a few more shout outs from Burwood that's here in Sydney. We've got one from Indonesia. We've also got greetings from Chicago, Illinois. And whereabouts are you located, Paula, for everyone listening?
I am just north of Chicago in a town called Lake Forest, Illinois.
Oh, beautiful. Oh, beautiful. So if everyone is listening in later on, please make sure that you hashtag replay so that we know where you're listening in from as well, just so that we can track that as well. When we talk about the Montessori potential, tell us a little bit, Paula, about how you came across, why this book? So why was it really important for you to write this specific book on this topic? Maybe give us a little bit of insight as to the subtitle and where the idea for it came and why it's so important to share that message with everyone.
Yeah. Well, I kept hearing people ask about Montessori, be confused about what Montessori is, have very different examples that they had seen about Montessori. And having been around Montessori educators and Montessori parents and people who don't know much about Montessori for so many years, I really felt that some clarity needed to be brought forth for people, and nobody else was writing it. I think that's really what compelled me the most. If somebody else had been writing this book, I wouldn't have needed to do it. But seeing the need and hearing people say over and over, I wish there was something I could hand to parents that would explain to them what we're doing in our school or explain why we do the things the way that we do. So it really came out of that. In many ways, it was 25 years in the writing because it was that many years coming to it. But it was the last 6 years that I wrote the first draft and dedicated my time to it. And it was really fun to go around the country and talk to people from around the world about their experiences in Montessori, their experiences with public Montessori, things that I didn't know as much about with Montessori, talk to trainers, check with other heads of schools. Are you having the same kinds of experiences? Do you think this also? And so it was really, I did a lot of casual research in that sense. And it was really compelling and assuring that, yes, this is the book we need. Yes, these are the messages that are very consistent out there. And this is the wording that is helping people to understand Montessori better. So that's a bit about where the book came from and why I decided to write it.
So would you say that the book has some really practical and because what I find with a lot of Montessori books or people that do write is that it comes from a perspective of a very theoretical or very, a high level of understanding of Montessori. Do you think that this book really can connect then to parents and really let them know more about the foundational principles and, and what it is in terms of the benefit, for their child? Is that how you see this book?
I do, because what I wanted to do was really show people how, where, and why Montessori works, exactly what's happening. And years ago, when I was giving a presentation to grandparents at our school, Forest Bluff School, a grandparent came up to me afterwards and she said, I've been to my other grandchildren's schools, which are conventional schools, traditional schools. And she said, yours is the only one where you actually explain how you do things. They all say that they're making the children into creative thinkers and problem solvers and teaching them to collaborate, but they don't really show you how that's happening or even that it is. They say it, but you really show how. So I really thought about that. That really stuck with me. And I thought, well, I'm doing that because I'm showing them images. I'm showing them photographs of their grandchildren working, but I'm also giving them principles. And then I'm telling them stories. I'm showing them where these things happen and helping them to make the connection between these ideas, these principles, and actual action. So I have lots of anecdotes in the book and many descriptions of children, and really try to make that connection real for people so that it isn't just theory, as you say. And at the same time, I didn't want to write a book that was completely practical. There's some great Montessori books that tell parents what to do. Do this, and then I wanted to bridge that gap between the two. We do this because here's what's happening behind the scenes. Here's what might happen, and so here's what we do.
Yeah, and I think that that's something that is such a fresh outlook, because sometimes, like you said, there is that disconnect between the two. I am gonna probe a little bit and ask you to give us a little bit of insight into the book, the content of the book, and let's talk about. And if anyone out there is listening and you guys have a question for Paula, this is your chance. This is your chance to ask her about the things that you really want to hear about. We do have some questions that have come in already. The first one is, how does Montessori benefit the future of the child opposed to, say, other more traditional methods? And I know that you kind of touched on that, where we can actually show the parents, the type of skills that the children are learning. And it's a really hands-on sensory, type of learning. They're learning about the concept of what things actually are, instead of just, this theory. Tell us in your words, like, how have you found that Montessori has really benefited children?
Well, we know that this is a very unpredictable world we're living in. It's becoming more and more so, I would say. And Dr. Montessori believed that education should help human beings to adapt and help children in their adaptability. Children are more adaptable than we are as adults, but education should foster the traits of adaptability. And so I think when you look at the problems in the world today and you think about what a young person is going to need to be able to do, if I ask any audience, they say the same things. When I say, what do you think a young child is going to need to learn to survive in an unpredictable future? And they usually say the same kinds of things. They talk about persistence, resilience, resourcefulness, courage, the ability to concentrate, the ability to be organized, the ability to collaborate, to empathize with other people. And these kinds of traits and qualities, this is exactly what we foster in Montessori. And they lead to the ability to solve problems, to work collaboratively with other people, to think creatively, and so on. So yeah, that's where I want to help people make that connection. And what I do in the book to help all general readers is I talk about 8 traits, 8 qualities that I consistently see in Montessori graduates. There are many, of course, but 8 that I see consistently. And then I mention them all through the book so that it's this thread of these different qualities that people keep seeing come up again and again and again and again, and just nailing that point home that these are the traits that Montessori helps children develop. Here's how, here's where, and here's why. We believe that it's important so that they are prepared for a future that we don't know what it's going to be like, do we?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so foundational to understanding Montessori. And when we really take it back to the principles, like I know in our platform, we're really working, or we're a lot of our listeners and parents of children in in the early years, and they might be practicing Montessori at home. And a lot of the time we get, all of the, okay, well, what toys do I need to do? What activities do I need to do? And really, it's about taking it back to the principles. And these are the traits that you were talking about, which I'm sure are going to be an amazing read through the book. And when we talk about those foundational life skills, that's actually what we're building in children. So we talk about how can we make them more independent in the home? How can we build their self-confidence? How can we build their self-belief? How can we build their critical thinking and problem solving? Those are the things that principally, the morals and the values that underpin what we do, or the respect for the environment and themselves, like all of those things is really what Montessori is about. And that's essentially when we say, okay, we want to practice Montessori at home, or bringing that philosophy in, it's like, okay, how can we as a family unit or in our space foster those traits? Because we just want to prepare children to be the best that they can be, to be prepared for life. Sometimes I have parents that ask me, oh, but Sylvia, if what happens because my child has gone through Montessori in the early years, and then they're going to step into a mainstream school because we have no option. How are they going to adapt? And I love the point that you mentioned about adaptability, because I tell them all the time, Montessori has actually given them the skill set so that they can adapt and be in any environment and actually thrive.
Mm-hmm.
I find that Montessori children, wherever they go, even if it is into a mainstream, they can take on tasks, they can work independently and be really confident because they have those foundational skills. I don't know if you wanted to mention anything about, or talk about maybe some tips for parents about, what to do with Montessori at home, or, how they can really adapt that principle or the traits into that setting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that outside of school, so much happens. The children are with their parents, whether they're homeschooling or they're in a traditional school and they're with their parents outside of school. There's a lot that parents can do to foster that love of learning with their own curiosity, with following interests, with modeling for their children, reading to them at home, taking them to museums, connecting them with nature, and really feeding their own interests and helping their children to follow their own interests outside of school. So that's what I would say there about just the importance of keeping it going and setting an example. I think it's really important for people to pull back on the amount of screen time that children experience today, especially because in some schools they're spending time on screens as well. And it's really important, we know, for children to have real experiences interacting with each other, interacting with people and with nature around them, and touching and moving. And especially for the youngest children, they learn through their senses. They need to be in contact with the real environment around them. So does that answer your question? Is there more you want?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about how they can, so in the home environment, say, for example, we know that, taking them out and doing nature walks and all that, what would be the most important thing? So if a parent is listening and they think, okay, well, I really want to embrace Montessori, I want to do this in my home, where can they start? Is there something that you think, okay, maybe they should understand Montessori first and see what that is, or what would be your advice?
I think there are certain principles of Montessori to focus on, and three that come to mind are observation, respect, and independence.
Yeah.
So in Montessori, we are always starting with observation. We always begin by observing, not seeing what we think we see, but seeing what really is there. So training ourselves to be a little more objective and to pause and to really watch our children and to try to understand the behavior that we see. So observing first with a very open mind, an unprejudiced mind. The second is respecting the child, treating them with great respect, modeling respect in the way we speak to them, the way we move around them, the way that we respect others and the environment and objects. When we say environment, we always mean our surroundings, everything that we're touching and seeing and interacting with. And then fostering independence. So independence is a big theme in Montessori. And so I think that's one that parents can really attach to. And I can give you some concrete examples. So if we start from birth, from infancy, and we want to foster independence, we have to think, what is this young person capable of on their own? And allowing them, giving them the opportunities to do those things. So a very, very small infant can slither, they can move, they can wiggle, they can start to roll over, they can lift their head. So we can think about putting a bed on the floor for them as opposed to a crib so that they can start to move. And when they see something across the room and they do begin to scoot and to crawl, they can go over to that toy maybe in the morning or that object and start interacting with it before the parent even comes in. So we've set up the environment, we've set the stage for them to have that independent experience. With a very young child who's walking and their hands are free, instead of having a high chair for eating meals, we can have a very low table in, like coffee table size height. In the kitchen with a very small chair that the child can climb in and out of. And this sets the stage. It gives the message, you are an important person who's capable of certain things, and you belong here. And we would like you to participate and join us and help us. So the next step of independence is just always inviting them rather to join us in our adult work. So a 2-year-old can help prepare food. They can take off the tops of the strawberries, the stems. They can wash the strawberries in a tiny colander. So are we as parents giving them objects that are the size for their hands, putting them low down where they can get to them, opening up spaces so that they can move in them, and giving them something purposeful to do that has real meaning that we are also involved in. So, you get to be with the adolescent can join the adults and can help plan a trip, can help navigate how we're going to cook this meal. There's always something that young people can be doing to join their family, and that sends these messages. You are an important, valued member of this family from the time they're very, very young. And I tell parents, it's the dynamic. What you're trying to do from the very beginning is set up the dynamic of what your relationship is going to be like with your child. You're going to be a collaborator. You're the authority, but you're going to be a collaborator. You're going to be a supporter. You're going to help them to be their own self. That's really, really important in Montessori. And that's something that everyone can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I really, really want to reiterate the point of allowing children to be a contributing member of the family or the environment that they're in, whether that's a community, a classroom, a family, because making them feel that they have a say in things. A lot of the time we live in a very adult driven world, and especially when we have young kids, it's like, oh, but it's quicker if I do it and it's easier if I do it, and oh, we just need to do this and that, and so allowing opportunities for such young children to be involved. And like you said, just the simple tasks of involving them in the everyday, everyday activities, the daily prep, the daily rhythm, all of those are opportunities for learning. And these are the opportunities that we're going to give to children that will really foster this independence and allow them to grow and feel self-confident, because they have this belief that, hey, I'm valued, I'm respected, I can also make decisions in this family, I'm not always being told what to do. So I love that point about, being, giving them the opportunity to be involved. And one comment I had on observation, which is one of the hardest things, as parents. I mean, we're lucky if we've had Montessori training and we've had all these hundreds of hours sitting in a classroom observing and learning how to observe. For parents, it can be hard to see, well, what does observing mean? Does it mean just watching my child? And like you said, not having these preconceived ideas, try do a new activity. You've been doing that for 5 minutes now, not realizing that a child that's engrossed or focused on something for so long is mastering that skill and needs to be there for as much time as they need to. So my advice when it comes to observation, usually with parents, is to look for repetitive movements. So if a child is repeating something, and try to sit on your hands and not step in, which is sometimes really hard because we just want to comment and we just want to be involved. But there's that fine line of, really trying to sit back and see, what is it that my child is interested in? Is there a pattern? Do I see them repeating the same thing in the kitchen, in the living room, keep stacking and, pouring? So those opportunities are really important. Now, Paula, we've had some questions come through, so I'm just going to skip over here. Firstly, I want to say hi to Beth, who's listening in from Mexico. And okay, so one of the questions is a little bit of a long one, but we'll get through it. So I try to implement Montessori principles at home, but I have work and often need to leave my 11-month-old with my in-laws during extended work travels. In our home, he has a dedicated workspace, and I try to keep an orderly environment, especially in places he frequents and the things he can see at his level. While our parents now understand the importance of giving him the freedom to move his body independently while supervising for safety, I feel that they are not quite there in terms of establishing, and I didn't get the end of that. So if that person's out there, could you just probably just type in the rest of that, because I'm not sure why we didn't get the end of the comment, but I'm assuming that it's really, maybe they're not in terms of establishing the importance of independence for that child. And it is a really tricky topic when you're talking about in-laws and leaving your child in a space that you can't control, or even if it is in your home. And I know we've had these discussions on quite a few of our events, but Paula, I would love to hear here we go. Thank you. Establishing a general rhythm to his day and an orderly environment. So how do we navigate that when we're talking about, in-laws or grandparents or carers that are looking after our children when we're not there?
That's a really good question, and one that I see all the time. So I think the important thing, I think it's really important. I'm going to assume that this is a first child. I think it's really important to relax and not be too worried about your child's development. When they're with family members, they're going to get something different from them. And I think the more we worry about controlling their environment, it takes the joy out a little bit. And I think the best thing to do is to gently model, use words that helps them to understand what you're trying to do with your child and what you hope for with your child. Most people really do understand the Montessori principles, the idea of, I want my child to be able to do it himself. Most people understand that. To remove that dynamic of the in-law, and it's important to be gentle about it and to be welcoming and to think a little bit about that person's personality and what might appeal to them. So for instance, if a mother-in-law loves to cook, that's a great, maybe your child isn't going to do some of the things that you wanted him to do when he was at her house, but you can say, it would be really special for him to be able to cook with you. I brought over some tools that he can use to stir a tiny little bowl, this tiny little table for your house. And he can, and the mother-in-law might think it sounds crazy at first, but people are usually really excited to be involved with their children, their grandchildren, their children, relatives, even a caregiver who's outside of your family, but who spends a lot of time with your child, even if they're from another culture, trying to learn about what does that person love to do, and trying to help them make a connection with your child where your child may learn something different from that person, but that's beautiful too. And when they're with you, they can have that very orderly environment and space set up. The main principles that you're working on, you know, they might be respect, they might be independence, it might be having a rhythm, having some kind of structure in terms of routine, when they nap, when they eat. Now, those are important things, but pick those things that are most important and let go a little. It's going to work out. Your child's going to be this amazing person that is a kaleidoscope of their experiences and their interactions and relationships with different family members. It's not going to be your vision. It's going to be what happens to them. So their life, their interactions, and their relationships that are special. So I hope that's helpful.
I think that's great advice, Paula. We do have a blog on our Guide and Grow, and I wrote about, navigating in-laws, and my first piece of advice was letting go. And I think, it's difficult. It's not easy to think about, okay, well, these are, and you think you're putting in so much effort and you're doing all of that. But the thing that I love about what you pointed out was that they're actually going to be learning and understanding and cultivating such an amazing experience with other people outside of that daily rhythm. And children are so resilient. And I know some parents get a little bit worried, like, oh, but I'm doing all of this. Is it going to undo some of the work that I've been doing? And all I can say is children are so adaptable and they're so resilient, and they pick up, from all their environments, the best of those experiences and opportunities. So it is a really difficult thing to let go. Yes, Paula, go ahead.
I was just going to say the exception, and where I would definitely draw the line, is if a caregiver is putting a child in front of a television or a screen.
Oh, yeah.
And they're getting a lot of stimulation that is not appropriate for their age, or they're playing with children who are really not a great example. Those kinds of things are really important. But it sounds like you get the gist of it. So it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a comment saying such an important point, letting go to help your child become more independent. Absolutely. Patty also says hi from LA, La Grange, Illinois. I'm sure that's right. IL, Paula, help me out.
LaGrange.
Yeah, nice. All right. So we've got another question that's come through and says, how can parents encourage independence and children's growth? Now, I know that we covered a lot of that, independence, around, involving them in the day and trying to prepare those little opportunities for independence. Is there anything else that you think that maybe we didn't cover, or a point that you could think about?
Sure. I think that what I learned from Montessori is that we're looking at the child as an active learner, not a passive learner who sits in a chair and listens, but an active human being that has to interact with the environment in order to develop themselves and build themselves as a person. And when you look at that paradigm of the child building themselves, forming themselves, and you respect and realize that that individual is their own being. This is hard for us to do as parents, but when you can really, really keep resetting that view for yourself and seeing your child as their own person with their own journey who needs to figure things out for themselves, I think that's really helpful. And I struggle with it too. I mean, I use examples in the book about it was easier for me as a parent to help my child when he was really little to make his own mistakes. It was okay. I was more comfortable with that, with him falling or, finding his balance. Harder for me, interestingly, when my children were older, watching them have their own ideas that were very different from mine that I didn't agree with. But having to say to myself, this person is going to find their way. This is not my life. This is not my person. I'm me, they're them. And the best I can do is model and show them the way that I do it and do my own thing. And the more you do your own thing, the healthier the relationship. So I hope that's helpful. And that, I think, is very closely tied to that idea of independence.
Yeah, it really is. It is really helpful. The idea of the active learner, and knowing that Montessori really cultivates and allows children to develop into their own being. And I really love the talk about the adolescent, having such a different view of life, and, the ideas can be quite different to yours. And one of the biggest tools I find helpful in kind of coming up with a solution is problem solving together, like saying, these are my ideas. What about you? What are your ideas? And putting them all on a piece of paper visually, and kind of comparing notes, because then it's a collaborative approach. It's not, this is what I think we should, or this is what we're doing, and this is where we're going. It's a really collaborative and an opportunity for the adolescent to feel like they are part of that decision making. And, and I think that gives them a lot more respect and trust and connection to that relationship.
For sure.
Does your book, Paula, is there any age bracket that your book goes to, or does it cover from like birth? Is it suitable for all age children or parents? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So one of the powerful aspects of Montessori education is how Dr. Montessori looked at the whole spectrum of childhood. So a person's journey all the way from birth to adulthood at about age 24. And so I really talk about that a lot in the book, and try to help people to understand that we're going to treat each stage differently, but it's the same person. So they have this continuity, and they have this continuity through the age groups in the way that we are presenting education. But we're going to respect the characteristics and needs of each age group. So up until about age 6 or so, there are certain needs and characteristics that all children under age 6 have in common. For instance, they learn very much through their 5 senses, by touching, listening, seeing, feeling things, moving things. That's really how they absorb information. A child from ages 6 to 12, those children have a lot in common in their characteristics and needs. They're very, very social. They want to be with each other. They want to interact mentally, intellectually. They want to try to explore now, not so much physically with their hands, but their minds. So they want to explore ideas. They want to talk about ideas. They want to use their reasoning minds, their imagination. So you see those characteristics. So we're going to treat the younger children a little differently and have a different kind of environment set up for them to meet their needs than we are for the older ones. And then you're going to have a different environment for adolescents who are in their own stage of life, and so on. So to help people understand that, because if a family has children at different ages, you're going to interact with your children differently. You're going to present different things to them. You're going to try to help them in different ways. They have different needs for their development, and respecting that is so important, and something that Montessori gave us so much information about how to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so excited to be reading all about that in your new book. We did have a question that's come through. A Facebook user said, I'm brand new to Montessori. I have 4 older children plus a 2-year-old. How can I start incorporating Montessori for all my children without doing too much change all at once? Also, is there a method for redirecting or correcting bad behavior, such as biting, stealing, etc.? There's two questions there I can see. Paula, I'm happy for you to start off, and I'll definitely be giving my commentary into that.
Yes, I know you're going to have some things to add to this, Sylvia. There are really wonderful resources in the Montessori community about the second part of your question there, about redirecting and correcting undesirable behaviors. But I think starting to incorporate Montessori into your family's life, I think that it's really hard to answer without knowing what you mean by too much change at once. But I think the first thing that I always tell people to think about is the environment. So the physical setup of your home. We don't want to make our home into a children's home. We have a children's house. That's what we call the school atmosphere, the school environment. And that's set up just for the children. But at home, it's a home where there are adults living, there are people of different ages living, there are animals living there. And so what we do need to think about is, are there spaces for the children, and are there ways for them to make their needs met and to contribute in the home? So is there a small table for them next to the larger table? Is there a lower shelf for them to reach things on next to the higher shelf? And just kind of going room by room and starting to think about first the bedroom for each child. Is each bedroom one where the child can access a couple of good choices for their clothes in the morning? Can they get out of their bed? Can the 2-year-old get out of their bed without help? So starting with the bedrooms, then I would go to the kitchen, because the kitchen is an interactive place where everybody can take part. And you might even have sort of like a Goldilocks situation where a couple of the older children are going to be up at the counter with a step stool. The younger one, who might fall off a step stool, is very little, is going to have their own little table space where they can be preparing some food. They're all doing something different, and we're putting it all together. And then I would start looking at bathrooms and common areas, like where we first come into the home. Is there a place for us to put our shoes? Is there a very low hook for a child to hang their own coat up, so that we're not taking it from them and then bringing it back down to them? So are there places where they can access things? So just a gradual step-by-step, starting with the environment, thinking about how you're modeling, and then moving on to thinking about the freedoms and responsibilities, or the choices that your children have and the boundaries that they have. And I would go in that order, thinking about the environment first. You might do that for a year and then start thinking about yourself as the model for them, and then start thinking about boundaries and choices that they're given. And you'll find a lot of information about all of that in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So for my commentary, we had here, by too much change, like swapping out all the toys to Montessori aligned. So physical change. However, what Paula was saying, and I'll reiterate that, when you set up the environment, so toys, whether they're Montessori aligned or not, doesn't really matter. You can practice Montessori without having, all of these toys that are, marketed as Montessori. And what we're talking about is the principles of Montessori. So as Paula was saying about, the changing small things in the environment, so communal areas like the kitchen or the bathroom, and all those daily rhythm, those things are really simple things that you can look at and say, okay, is it allowing my child the opportunity to be involved, to do the little things in their daily routine, like take off their shoes? That's Montessori. Montessori is really about the lifestyle, you're living. So for me, it's understanding the principles. How do you view your child? Do you see them as capable? Do you trust that they're able to do things on their own? Or do you give them the opportunity to do that? So understanding a little bit more about what Montessori is would be really helpful. So I wouldn't really be looking at any of the toys or having to change that. You could use what you have existingly. So if you looked at your space and thought, okay, these are the toys that I have. Are they decluttered? Is there too many in the one basket? Can I minimize that so that my child has a more orderly environment? Everything's at their level. It's nice and, tidy and organized so that they can find things and everything has its place. So you don't necessarily have to go and buy all these things to be Montessori. It's really about stripping it back, looking at the environment, checking in with yourself, understanding what Montessori actually is. And then when it comes to redirecting, when you're talking about, I just wanted to mention one thing to my audience, and I've spoken about this many of times on our YouTube channel, Guide and Grow TV. I've done videos on biting and hitting and lots of different resources. We'll definitely pop those in the links. We'll link those videos below to help you. When we see children displaying these behaviors, we just need to remember that they're trying to communicate. So that there's something going on underlying, whether it's their emotional needs not being met mentally or physical needs not being met. And then that's just their way of trying to communicate that, hey, something's going on for me. I need to let you know. So we've just really got to support them through that. Understand and acknowledge the frustration or, the upset or whatever it is that they're feeling, and help to build that emotional intelligence and help them understand what they can do, because developmentally young children don't have the ability to stop that reflexive action when they feel a certain way. So it's really our job as an adult to help guide them, in the right way and put those boundaries in too. Regina says here, so fabulous, Paula and Sylvia, thank you. Slipping out to put my toddler and baby to bed. So grateful for all this wisdom. You can definitely, Regina, catch the rest of this live later on. We're going to have it available on all our platforms streaming as well. So definitely, so thanks for that commentary, Paula, as well. I think one thing... Oh, yeah, here we go. We've got a nice comment. That's great. Already doing some of these things without realizing a few things learned too. Thank you. And you'll realize that a lot of Montessori, you probably are already doing so much. And it's not about comparing to what you see on social media or, what people think Montessori is. It's really about coming back to those principles.
Mm-hmm.
So Paula, one last question before we go into a little bit about your book. How important, and I know the answer to this, but I'd love to hear your opinion on this. How important do you think it is to start early with these practices or with the understanding of Montessori? What's the benefit or why should we be doing this?
Yes, well, as you've said, and some of the work that you've put out there, the importance of the early years is tremendous. That being said, of course, if someone is stumbling upon Montessori later and their children are older, it's never too late to start. But if the more we can do in the early years when our infants and very young children are just starting out, the more the impact will be. So it's about that, as I was saying earlier, setting up that dynamic for that relationship. And that's something that evolves. That's something that we don't just come out of the gate and say, this is the way I'm going to be with my children. We constantly reset ourselves, right? We constantly, the routine changes every few months. As the child grows and changes, as things going on in our lives change, we have to keep resetting and finding our way. So it's a continuation, it's an evolution that happens. But starting from the beginning is really beautiful. If somebody has the opportunity to do that, to realize that there is so much of value that we can do in those, even the first months of life, the first weeks of life, that make a difference for our children, and how we hold them respectfully, how we speak to them, make eye contact with them, put them in situations where they can move, hold them instead of, putting them in a contraption of some kind, but really help them to be free and to move their bodies, to listen to them and respond to them and interact with them. So it is from the beginning.
And I really want to reiterate to everybody listening out there the point about it's never too late to start. I have people that message me, oh, my child is 3. Is it too late to start Montessori? And I think to myself, you have a whole lifetime ahead of you. Montessori is a lifestyle. It's applicable to any age, to any, even in your adult interactions. The principles and the foundation of this way of life is really applicable to life in general, and that is really displayed on, in so much, on so many levels. So I definitely think that there's such a depth to the Montessori practice and lifestyle, and I can't wait to learn a lot more about the adolescent and the older age groups, because it's an area that I'm not too familiar with. So I can't wait I've grabbed my copy of your book. For everyone that's listening out there, we're going to pop the link. You can pre-order the Montessori Potential. Tell us a little bit, maybe some little summary or something where people can know a little bit about your book, just that tad more.
Okay, great. I just wanted to say too, when you were just saying if somebody says they feel they're starting late, I'm thinking age 13. And we've had children come to our school when they're adolescents, and their parents say, "Oh, I just found out about this." But usually, as you've alluded to, Sylvia, there are things that families are already doing. People usually don't go from one extreme to another. They usually find Montessori and say, "Oh, this feels so right to me because these are the kinds of things I'm already doing a bit of. And this is really wonderful that now I have some guidance. Now I have some principles. Now I have sort of this structural way of thinking about things that makes so much sense. And that's helping me. That's really helpful." So I hope that people find a lot of help from that. And I think a lot of help from the book. So I'll get into that a little bit. I wanted this book to be originally for everyone. The first couple of times I wrote the first drafts, it was, who's the audience? It was, I wanted to be everybody. It was, Montessori teachers and Montessori administrators and everybody. So then I had to start honing down and choosing a voice. And I ended up really wanting to talk to parents and knowing that teachers will read this book and find it useful and helpful. People very familiar with Montessori will find it helpful in that it will give them some clarity in how they talk about Montessori and ways to explain it. I hope it will help them to think of other ways to explain it that work for them. But I want it to be a conversation starter and to give people an introduction to Montessori, but also to help them feel very confident. When they are finished with the book, they will feel confident. They really know a lot about Montessori and really important things about Montessori. They know the main most important ingredients to know, and they feel equipped to head out and see a school and have a feeling about whether the school is meeting Montessori's goals, to feel that they have ideas about how they can bring Montessori into their home, that they know what Montessori looks like in a classroom, even though they might not have ever seen one before, that they understand a bit of the structure of Montessori. I explained that it has a framework that really makes it work. It's not just these random ideas. I think in a lot of progressive school movements, you see, oh, this is such a great thing to have hands-on learning and mixed age groups and learning from peers and following your interests. And these are all really positive things, and they're parts of Montessori, right?
Yeah.
But if you just have any of those things randomly, or even all of them randomly, it fails. It has failed over and over and over. And that is why so many progressive schools, these big movements come and then they go. And then people snap back to this very traditional way of doing schooling, which is based in the factory model, based on the idea that children are passive and they just sit there and they're going to listen. They're going to take in information and then spit it back
Yeah.
out, and then they're going to be educated somehow. And we know that that doesn't work very well, but people have had such a hard time trying to figure out how to address the active learner. So Montessori takes all of these ideas by watching children and observing. They do learn with their hands. They do learn from each other. It is wonderful to have mixed age groups because they learn from example and they learn by teaching younger children. So, but she put it all together in a structure framework that makes it work. And one of the things that makes it work that I explain in the book is a curriculum. We have all these presentations that we can give children, that we're trained to give, that we learn the sequence of, and we learn the reasons for and the purposes behind them and the age groups and the what.
I think we had a little bit of a loss of Paula there. I think she's frozen. I'm not sure if anyone's out there. Could you just let me know? I'm seeing it frozen on my screen. Just let me know. Yep. I think we may have lost Paula for a moment. But I just wanted to reiterate a few of the points. Oh, thanks, Kat. Yeah, frozen. I just wanted to reiterate a few of the points, like Paula was saying, about, you know, being that active learner and the difference between the traditional and, you know, the Montessori, and having that structure and framework. Even if your child isn't going to a Montessori school or has that environment, I feel like there's so much of what you can do in the home and, you know, with your child along that journey, regardless if they are going to a traditional or a mainstream. Thanks so much for all the comments there to let me know. We have just lost Paula, but if you are interested in her book, you can pre-book. I'm so excited to have, you know, Paula's book, because I know that she comes from such a wealth of knowledge and information about Montessori. So we are going to type those in the comments below so that you can pre-order the Montessori Potential. It's been such a lovely discussion, and I know that we've had so many comments and questions come through. We have run out of time. You know, support and community is so important on our Montessori journey, and that's why I'm so grateful to have such an amazing community such as yourself that is always following and learning and willing to learn so much more about what they can do. This event is part of our village, our Guide and Grow village that we've just launched. We do lots of, you know, live events, and we do Zoom events and so much more. There are resources that help you along your journey. There's educators that are there to guide you along the way. There's month-by-month development guides. We've put it all together from pregnancy right the way through to 3 years in our Guide and Grow village. Thank you. We have so many thank yous coming through. Thank you. Thanks, Kat. It's been amazing. It's been such a wonderful discussion. I'm so sorry that we lost Paula at the end, but I'm so glad that we had this opportunity to have this amazing conversation with her. And thank you all for joining us. We've definitely going to pop Paula's socials up here. We've got her Instagram and any other socials that she is a part of. If you wanted to contact her, maybe send her a thank you as well. I will definitely be giving her all of the thanks. Oh, and she's just popped back into the studio. That's all right, Paula. We were just popping up your socials there. We had quite a few people saying thank you. We were just wrapping up. I'm so glad that you could pop back in and do a little outro. So I really appreciate your time today, Paula. I've let everybody know where they can purchase the book and contact you as well, you know, with your Instagram and LinkedIn.
Yes.
But yeah, if you wanted to say a final word, you're more than welcome to.
I'm so sorry. I finally created a hotspot with my phone to try to come back to you. I'm really sorry about that.
That's okay.
Our internet issues. Yes, I'm excited for people to be able to use this book. I hope it's going to be useful and helpful, and a book that people can give to their local public school board to tell them this is a great way to educate children. We really want a public Montessori program in our area, to really promote it, to know how to promote it, to know what kinds of things to look for in public Montessori and how it can work. There's a whole chapter about that. and to be able to start a school if you don't have one in your area, and to feel confident doing that. I have a whole chapter about a Montessori school and what that can look like, and how that can be done. So I hope there's something in there for everyone, and that people will find it very useful and really love it. I can't wait for it to be out there on February 7th. And I hope you'll all look for it, pre-order it, and have it coming to you when it comes out.
Thank you so much, Paula. Thank you so much for joining us today. And for everyone that's listening out there, it's been a really informative and rich discussion. I love having these discussions with amazing Montessorians like yourself. We all learn and reflect and collaborate with each other. And I think that's what the Montessori journey is about. So thankful to have you once again. Really appreciate your time. And I can't wait for the book. You'll have us waiting all through Christmas and New Year's, but I'm sure it's definitely going to be worth the wait.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. It's really meant a lot to be with you today. And thank you to everyone for being here with me.
All right, everyone. Bye. Take care. Until next time.
Goodbye. Thank you.